get started. Well, first off, good morning. This is Francisco. For this morning's class titled Validation Rules, we're going to learn how to set up our minimum staffing requirements for various shifts. And we may choose to apply these types of minimums to our patrol schedules. That's probably the primary place where these types of rules would get applied. And so what we're going to do over the course of the next hour is we're going to make sure that, number one, our shifts are set up to have minimum staffing requirements. I'll show you how that's done. Then we're going to take a look at the various skill sets that you may track. So when we're looking at minimum staffing, are we looking at how many officers we need, how many supervisors we need? So we're going to create the different positions or skill sets that we want to track. We'll then start entering in the amount of people we need per skill set, whether it's 5 or 6 officers, 1 or 2 supervisors. We're going to enter those requirements by hour. And so once we're done setting up those rules, you're going to have a window like this available, which will give you an hour-by-hour reading of what skill set you need coverage for, and what the requirements are, how many people you need. If we look at my day shift here, this is labeled in red because we may be operating below minimum staffing. So by entering those rules, you're going to have reports and other tools available to help you figure out, when you're going to be able to grant time off, if you have a staffing issue, if it's something that's actionable, or whether you're just going to let it slide. And so we're going to be working off of the administration drop-down menu. And the first screen we're going to look at is found under the Shift Center. It's called Setup Shifts, and in one of the earlier classes, you probably created an admin shift, a couple of patrol-type schedules. And here I'm operating off of a 12-hour shift, so I just have a standard night and day shift here. What's important is when you highlight the shift over on the right at the bottom, you want to make sure that Validate Minimum Staffing Levels is marked yes. This is not where we're going to enter the rules. You're just stating that this is a shift for which later on we will define minimum staffing requirements. So if that's set to no, just make sure that you click on yes and click on the Save button up top. And do that with your other shifts that you're going to be tracking. So my day shift is already set to yes, so no problems there. And once you're done, you can close out of the Setup Shift screen. And we're going to move away from the Shift Center into the Validation category. Now we're going to look at these not necessarily in order. We're going to take a look at validation and coverage skill sets first. Under the validation and coverage skill sets, I have the 3 different types of positions that I am tracking. You can have up to 6. And you may have employees that belong to more than one skill set. Now, I have one here for desk, one for patrol, and one for OIC. Now, the order in which I've entered these may be important. What I mean by that is my skill set at the very bottom, which is my OIC or supervisory skill set, is of higher priority than patrol, and patrol is higher priority than desk. So in instances where you do have employees that belong to more than one skill set, what the system is going to do is it's going to count that employee towards the highest priority skill set first. In other words, if I have a completely empty shift with no one working, that means that I am below on my patrol skill sets, I'm below on my OICs. If I drop an individual who's capable of working both, the system will automatically count them towards the OIC skill set because it sees it as the skill set of highest importance. Now, once you add another body onto that shift, the system may recalculate that. In other words, if you have two people who are capable of working as an OIC and you drop them onto an empty shift, it's going to assign it to the person of higher seniority. And that's just an assumption that our system is going to make. Now, just above the coverage skill sets, you have color assignments. This is going to be used for your daily schedules. So if I slide it over, looking at my day shift, that's in red, indicating a staffing shortage. So that's our shift color when validation fails. The shift color when validation passes is blue. And so for these shifts, like my Detective Bureau and Records Division, they might not have minimum staffing requirements, so they just might always appear in blue. Now, you're free to add up to 6 validation skill sets, and you're free to change the colors. You may choose something a bit more generic for the background when the shift is operating at minimums, and you might choose something like red or some other color like yellow maybe to indicate when a shift is operating below minimums. And if I was to save that and close it out, the next time my screen has a chance to refresh, now those shifts that are operating at or above minimum staffing levels now appear with a white background, and of course the one where I'm falling below is still in red. Let's bring up validation and coverage skill sets again. And are there any questions on creating the skill sets?
Would that go under validation, employee validation skill sets? Is that where you would do that?
No, that is under validation and coverage skill sets. After you're done setting the skill sets, we're then going to assign our employees to them. So that will be the next one. Okay. If there's no questions on this, at least as of this moment, we can close it out. And now we're going to select employee validation skill sets. So the system is not going to know which employee is counting towards which skill set because the system is not doing it by rank. It's doing it by the skill sets that you just created in the previous screen. So we must use this screen to select our employees, And I only have a small department of 34 people, so I'll select all and then select and close. You'll see everyone's name listed on the left, and over on the right, you're going to see the skill sets that you created. In my case, only 3. And you're just going to use the checkboxes next to each label to mark which skill set each employee belongs to. So just curious as to which skill sets you'll be tracking in your system.
We have patrol and supervisor in charge, so SIC.
Okay.
We have a patrol skill set, an SIC skill set, and I believe we have a dispatcher skill set too. But I was going to just ask, can you sort this any differently? The names or the titles? Can you sort it by title or anything like that? Because we assign like officers get assigned patrol officer. So
okay.
Is there any way to sort that so that I don't have to go through everybody individually, that I could just sort it by title?
I think so.
And then assign the skill sets?
Yeah, I don't see why not. What I would do is I would select employees, and I had 34, so I'll click none to blank it out. And now over on the right, I can use the title button, and I can select my officers. Now, if my detectives could also cover patrol, maybe if they're working overtime on a particular day, right? They might have to belong to that skill set. The detective shift may not have any minimum staffing requirements, but if, Detective Jones all of a sudden picks up a night shift overtime on a Saturday, then the system is going to need to know, hey, this guy, even though he's a detective, he counts towards patrol minimums.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, and so I can select the titles of the folks that would be covered under the patrol skill set, and I will click on Select and Close. That narrows my list down to just the 19 guys there. I'll select all 19, so I need to make sure that all of those checkboxes are marked. And when I click on Select and Close, it's just showing those people. So I don't have a way of doing Select All, but at the very least, it's just easier to have than having to skip through people.
And we want to make sure that pretty much anybody who's capable of doing that particular job, the chief should be part of that, because maybe the chief could work patrol. I'm just being, obviously the chief in all likelihood would not work patrol, but he's a sworn officer, so he would count if he ever did work in patrol.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. So, here's my chief here, John Smith. Now, his normal Monday through Friday schedule has no minimum staffing requirements defined for it. So even though Chief Smith might count towards patrol minimums, that means nothing until Chief Smith is actually placed on a shift where minimums are defined. It is only at that moment that it really cares, hey, this guy is going to contribute towards that skill set.
Okay. I got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. So once you have placed the checks, click on the Apply button, and depending on how many entries or employees you've made changes to, it will just give you a quick confirmation that those entries have been updated. And you may have to just repeat the process for your supervisors. You may select employees, click None to just blank out the current selection, and over on the right, you can choose to do this by title. Our supervisors might be sergeants, whether lieutenants or anyone above that would come in and maybe fill that need, you can go ahead and select them if that's applicable.
Okay.
I'll just do it for the small group. Yes?
If we're migrating from the legacy version, a lot of this will already be set up for us, right? Or do we have to redo all this?
No, you're absolutely right. If you've already done this in the legacy system, this is already set up for you. But the method in which people get assigned or moved around, it's a little different, as you can see. So it's still good to know that this is where your validation controls are set. Now,
understood, right.
When you set up validation in the legacy system, did you do it by shift or did you break it down by hour?
We did it by shift.
By shift. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'm going to show you how to.
We did it by shift because there's a couple guys that are assigned to the shift, but they work, their hours change. We did it by shift. It was just easier. There was a reason why we didn't do it by hour, and I don't remember.
Yeah, well, I can tell you one of the reasons why some folks didn't do it by hour is in the legacy system, you had two choices. You either did shift validation, which meant patrol days needs 5 officers and 1 supervisor.
Correct.
Right? And then the second choice was to use hourly validation, which was the choice for departments that had overlapping shifts. If I have a day shift overlapping into my afternoon, then it may not be enough for me to say I need a certain amount of guys on my day shift. I might have to say I need a certain amount of guys based on the hour because, I have overlaps. And I don't care if the guy is on days or if the guy is on afternoons. From 3 to 5, I need 5 officers. I don't care where you're looking. So the hourly validation worked well for departments with overlapping shifts. The limitation in the legacy system had to do with the color change on the shift. If you used hourly validation, this function didn't work. This only worked when you did the simpler shift validation. There is also a rule that you can choose to automate in our system that states if an employee requests time off on a shift that's already operating at or below minimum staffing, that time off request should automatically be denied by the system.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a cool tool to use, but folks that were utilizing the hourly validation couldn't take advantage of that. That only worked with the simpler, straightforward shift validation, which I believe is what you're using. The good news is that in this newer version of our application, it works either way. Whether you're going to track it by shift, which is cool, or if you choose to do it by hour, which, to be honest with you, I kind of like. I think that's a pretty cool feature. But whichever way you choose to do it, you will be able to make use of the shift changing colors when it falls below, and you will also be able to automatically deny time off if the requests are going to cause shortages.
Okay. Well, when we migrate, we look at it.
Okay. So once we have assigned everyone to their appropriate validation skill sets, we now have to create what we call validation shifts. This is probably something that you did not create in the legacy system. So a validation shift can either be a single shift that you want to track, like patrol days being tracked separately from patrol nights, or a validation shift can be a collection of shifts, so that you're not necessarily looking at minimum staffing in terms of what shift, but by hour. So in order to duplicate exactly what you've done in the legacy system, you can create a validation shift called days, afternoons, and midnight. So I'll create one for days. And I have to give it a code like patrol days. And I do that only because sometimes we have patrol days and we have communication days. We sometimes have detective days. So I like to use prefixes like that sometimes. After you create the validation shift, select which shift you want it to look at, and then click on the Save button. I'm going to repeat the same set of steps for my night shift. And again, this is only if I plan on tracking minimum staffing for each shift separately. I'm going to create...
Explain this again, because you got me a little confused. Don't you already have that in required shifts?
So what happens is most departments are going to just create a patrol validation shift where they can track all patrol-related shifts. Now, of course, I only have 12-hour schedules, so I only have 2 patrol shifts.
Right.
So what this is going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to set my requirements not just for an individual shift, which is your choice, you can do it this way, or you can choose to track minimums across a group of shifts. Now I'm going to show you the next screen just to give you a little bit more context for what this all means, and we can always come back to this if we still have further questions. So now that I have validation shifts, let's close this out, and under the validation category still, we're now going to select validation rules by hour. From the top, I'm going to select days, nights, or patrol, which is covering both. Now, because you're using shift validation, this would be more in line with what you guys are doing now, but now you're entering it into a language that Schedule app, the newest version of our program, will understand.
Okay.
So this validation shift is only tracking the day shift. It cares nothing about nights, not at all. Over on the right, on the far right, I can enter my requirements based on days of the week, or if my requirements are the same Monday through Sunday, I can just leave that set to all.
Okay.
Now, when I click on this box right next to all, I'm going to key in the amount of people I need per skill set by hour. So because I'm tracking the day shift, maybe my requirements are 4 officers from 07 to 1900. Now that box that I just highlighted under the 1900 column means 1900 to 20. So that's where the night shift begins. So here's my requirements for patrol just for the day shift. Below, I'm going to do the same thing for my supervisor skill set. Maybe I just need 1 OIC from 0 to 7.
Is there any way, let me ask you this, is there any way to break this down by half hour instead of hour?
We cannot.
Okay.
What would end up happening is you would either have to enter a number in that full hour or leave it blank. What's going to end up happening is it's just going to give you a false negative on either
Right.
end of that shift.
Right.
Let's click on the Save button. And I'm just going to do the same thing for the night shift. That one begins at 1900 for me, so my requirements may be 4 officers, 1 OIC, and that of course spills over to the start of the day here. And that shift ends at 07, so the last box filled out will be the 0600 column. And let's finish up by entering our OIC requirements. And let's save that. Now, the last one, straight up patrol, is now looking at the day and night shift. So for this one, I'm going to enter a 4 throughout the day, and I'm just using the tab button to move to the next cell. And we'll save that. So we have an individual day, an individual night, and we have a full patrol validation shift. Now that we've entered the rules, you want to make sure that those rules are applied to the dashboards that we're working off of. So, up top, if I click on Edit Dashboard, and by the way, have you taken the class on creating dashboards?
Yes.
Okay, so this is going to look a little familiar. So on the night shift, I want to edit that window. On the day shift, yes. And here I'm just going to select the new day shift that I created. Okay, let's try another one. I'm going to have to do with one of the others. Okay, we'll click on the, oh, no, now I'm seeing something I shouldn't be seeing. And if you could just bear with me one moment.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, so let's take a look at this window here. This is the hourly validation grid. Now, I have 3 choices. I can have it look just at my day shift, right? So from 07 to 19, everything is in green, which means I am at minimum staffing. I can have that window look at nights. Or I can have it look across all patrol schedules. And that's the one I'll choose. I'll click on Apply and Use, and I will exit and save. Let's click Yes. So now, in the event that too many people call out, this grid is going to start changing. Let's say Patrick Johnson ends up calling out sick for the night shift, we may have to approve it because we simply have no choice. And once that gets posted onto the schedule, now you see the shift turns red because now we only have 3 officers and a supervisor, and it tells us exactly where the staffing issue is.
Mm-hmm.
In the section below, you can click on Rules by Hour. It'll tell you exactly what the rules are for the validation shift that we're looking at. And under Details, if I just use the scroll bar, it will show me who is working and what skill set they are contributing by hour.
If they have multiple skill sets, like in our department, I see you have 4 and 1, but our sergeants also count as patrol manpower. So if our skill set was 1 supervisor and 4 patrol, our box wouldn't go red, put it this way, because, you know what I'm saying?
Right, because the sergeant would cover the patrol skill set.
Correct.
But then doesn't that create a vacancy on the supervisor, or is he operating both at the same time?
He can operate both. We have right now, the way we're set up, it's less about skill set and more about manpower. So we're required to have a minimum of 4 people on a shift. And I'm just going to use day shift. We're required to have a minimum of 4 people, but one of those 4 people has to be a supervisor. So he fills both the patrol and the, you know what I'm saying? In our case, it's about bodies, and one of those bodies has to be a supervisor.
I understand. Now, keep in mind that if you create a supervisor skill set and you enter a requirement for that, and then you do the same for patrol, what's going to end up happening is if you have too many officers out and that sergeant is now basically performing both duties, what's going to happen is it's going to show that you're operating below. Because, see, even though I can belong to 2 skill sets...
You know what, Francisco, you're probably doing it the same way. The only difference is, like for us, we'll put 3 in patrol and 1 OIC. That's the only difference.
Oh, I see. So you always have that overage in there, I guess.
Yeah, so in our case, we make it, you have 3 patrol and 1 OIC. So if the OIC calls out, we're under manpower minimum. If someone from patrol calls out, then we know we're under patrol minimum. But, we know we have to fill a body either way.
Okay. All right, well, that's good. Now, the only other thing that I would mention is when you are setting up your dashboards, at the very bottom, there's an option to select the validation shift that you wanted to look at. Do you want to look at nights? Do you want to look at the full patrol? Now, you can't select days, right, because days wasn't included.
Right. I see what you're saying.
So you can select which set of rules you wanted to look at. And so those are the rules that it will take into account, and then it'll use that to either turn the screen red, white, or whatever colors you choose to use.
Okay.
Now, under there's one last screen we have to look at. Under administration, under the under the company center, the very first one here called application control. Under the other control section, you can choose to deny time off if staffing shortage. You can also choose approve time off if no staffing shortage. So based on the rules, right, if I request a day off and that shift is already operating at its minimum, the system will automatically deny that entry for me. Now, a supervisor will have the option to override that. You know, maybe I have an emergency, and maybe you'll just grant me the time off and fill the shift with overtime. You know, you still have that ability to override that process. Now, the other one, which is slightly less popular, is approved time off established.
No, our supervisors will do the approving regardless.
Yeah, that's never as popular as the other one.
No, I can imagine.
Okay. And of course, if you make that change, just make sure to click on the Save button before you finish. And that's it for setting up validation. You know, luckily
you do me a favor? Can you go to validation and take a look at I saw job skill sets. What was that all about?
Oh, okay. So slightly less popular is to track minimum staffing requirements not based on the bodies, but based on the job assignments that need to be filled. So if I have, you know, maybe I need 5 people working on every shift. Well, you're going to set up validation rules by hour. But aside from that, you might want to make sure that patrol areas are covered, zones. Well, what you can do there is select the validation shift. If the requirements are the same every day of the week, switch that to all. And then here, what you're going to do, oh, I'm sorry, I clicked on the wrong one. Validation job rules. There we go. So here, what you're going to do is select the job assignment, and I use zones for my patrol areas.
Yeah, we do. That's how we do it.
And I might say, okay, I need one person in zone 1, one person in zone 2, and actually I should have done it with the patrol, which is looking at the entire 24-hour window. So I'll just repeat that. Okay. And once you're done, click on the Save button. Just give that a second to do its thing. Okay, looks like we're in good shape. Okay, so let's just bring this back to its original state, right? We add needs by hour based on the bodies or based on the amount of people that belong to that skill set. Well, I can add another window that looks very similar, but in this one I'm going to select hourly job validation. The rules that were applied towards the patrol skill set, right? There's my zones.
Right.
And so even though I have enough people, or except for, that shortage on the night shift, my patrol areas have not been assigned.
Okay.
Okay? So now as I do this, and I may choose to use a screen very similar to what you had in your legacy application. It's called Manage Daily Assignments. It's now found under the Supervisor zone. I can just get to it. And you select the shift that you want to work with. And yeah, I'm going to have to do it another way. I'm having some technical issues here. So as you assign people to their jobs, now those will turn green. Unfortunately, I'm not exactly sure why I'm having the technical issues I'm having, but
let me ask you this. We do a lot. Our supervisors, and I'll tell you, our supervisors really, really like the auto-assign jobs. And I don't know if that's something we can still do in this version. Can we still do the auto-assign?
Oh, yes. And in fact, if it's already set up, it's just a matter of them going into the supervisor zone. And they're going to choose auto-assign employees to jobs. So it still works the same way. That's virtually unchanged.
Is the setup the same though? How do we assign people that are valid? You know what I'm saying? How do we assign
Well, you
people,
already did that in the legacy system, but if you had to adjust that at all, you can go to Job Assignment Center and you can select Manage Jobs for Auto Set.
Okay.
Yeah, but the good news there is that you've already done it, so that's nice. Yeah, you're going to notice a lot of the things are pretty much done for you. The only thing that you really have to focus on is security and converting your minimum staffing requirements over into hourly increments.
Okay.
All of your employees, your rules, all of that gets carried over for you.
Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful.
Okay. Any other questions on validation or on the job assignments that we looked at?
Wayne, do you have any? No, he's good. Okay.
Okay. Now, I just wanted to remind you, not sure if you've used these at all, but I'm just going to move this over here into this other screen. These help out sessions are one-on-one 45-minute sessions. So as you're migrating over, whether you're attending classes or you're just trying to make something happen that you saw in one of the classes and you're running into problems, we would recommend signing up for those. That way, tech support calls are usually, 5-10 minutes long. You might need a little bit more time than that. And that's exactly why these are available every week.
Sounds great. We appreciate this. This was almost the same thing. We're the only two here, so it's almost like giving our own.
Yeah, it's like your own class.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that comes down to depending on how many new members we have signing up for us at any given time. This same class next week might have 5 or 6 departments in it.
Right. Well, thank you again, Francisco. This was very enlightening.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
All right. We're done then?
We are. If there's no further questions on these items.
All right. Well, then you have yourself a very wonderful morning and afternoon. Have a good day.
You do the same. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.